Hi everybody, welcome to Beyond the Bench, where we discuss taking hardware through production and the stories along the way. My name is Bill Brock, CEO of Peridio, the ecosystem for building and maintaining advanced embedded products.
Hey everybody, just giving you a heads up, today will be a special episode, not me interviewing a hardware expert, but two resident experts from the Peridio team discussing binary distributions and how we're making that possible in the Avocado OS framework that we're building. Really exciting conversation with Justin, our Chief Product Officer, and Frank, who actually wrote the book on Yocto. And they're going to talk about working with binaries and embedded systems and why the Steam OS is the killer embedded app. Hope you enjoy it. And we'll see you next week.
Hi everyone, welcome to Guac Talk. I'm Justin Schneck, co-founder of Peridio, and I'm joined here with Frank Vasquez. He is the author of Mastering Embedded Linux Programming. So Frank and I are working together to create a new embedded Linux distribution called Avocado. And as you can tell, avocados, hence the inspiration for us to be able to take what we have as mostly friendly banter of conversing over the way that we've seen the embedded landscape move, our history, and helping to ship and build embedded products over the ages, and just take a peek at some of the neat things that we find that are embedded devices, processors, platforms, and things that we are interacting with daily as we work to create this new embedded distribution. More on that as we move into this later, but to start, we'd like to kick off just by being able to look at something that we find pretty interesting. And lately, we've been looking at the Steam Deck, which is a fun piece of Linux hardware. I have one myself, right? And the easy thing to be able to say about the Steam Deck is, does it satisfy its purpose of being able to do embedded hardware? Its point of this product. Yes, it does. Yeah, I've played more AAA games now that I can do it remote, like anywhere, than I have before, and so that's been quite enjoyable. But this thing has another trick up its sleeve, and what is that, Frank?
It's a Linux PC, right? That's what attracted me to it. It just like because like, okay, you want to buy a consumer device, like what are your choices, right? Android, right? Like, I mean, I don't think anybody buys an Android tablet anymore, but you there's plenty of Android phones out there. You got Android running in some people's cars. Of course there's iOS. That's, I have an iPhone. My son has an iPad. Okay, these are walled gardens, right?
I think that this product's just been like the result of a hacker's dream forever. I mean, we've seen in so many different movies I can think of. We were talking earlier, laughing about a throwback, which is Hackers. I mean, every engineer seems to have at least seen that once. But the portable Linux machine that you can run around with quickly and do what you want with it. You can't do that with Android as much, or even iOS, being those sort of closed walled garden domains.
Yeah, it's like hands off, right? You can't get a shell on this thing. You're doing everything through apps and only installing what's in the app store, and so it's limiting, as you say. But you can get the dock, right? I don't have the dock, but I don't even have a Steam Deck, but like I'm aware you can get the dock, plug it into your TV, you can plug in a keyboard, you can plug in speakers. It becomes the centerpiece of your living room. I won't buy one for my 13-year-old son yet, but I'm sure he would love it.
Yeah, I've played with the Linux features of this a bit. I've plugged it into my TV. I've used SteamOS just to be able to play Steam games. I've even paired like Bluetooth controllers to it from Xbox and PlayStation, so that it just acts like a console. But even more so, I've taken this with me with the intent to play games. But I actually found myself on a flight once compiling on the Linux desktop of it some Yocto in the background, which is a pretty beefy operation. As we can see, this is only a we're looking at the CPU specs. It's an AMD. They call it an APU. Yeah, it's an AMD APU, an accelerated processing unit. It's based off their Zen 2 architecture, and it's basically just that a pretty decently sized AMD PC CPU with a pretty big beefy GPU on it. And I got it to compile. I mean, I got to say, compiling Yocto on the Steam Deck wasn't as enthralling as playing a AAA game on it, but it certainly chewed through the battery equally.
Right. So, given that you're using it as a PC, so my understanding is that it's running Arch, right? That's what Steam OS is. It's their custom version of Arch. So I mean, are you a convert now? Because given that everybody has their favorite flavor of Linux, nerds like to argue about this kind of thing.
Pretty adaptable. I can switch between them fairly nimbly, if you will. But I mean, even though it's a customized version of Arch, I don't believe that it behaves unlike a regular desktop, right? And that's so you found an article about how somebody
right. So could you get a desktop on there, or are you limited to the command line? Is there a GNOME desktop?
Yeah, there's a GNOME desktop to it, and Steam OS. They've done a lot of work with their big picture mode. That's basically what Steam boots the Steam Deck boots up to. But similar, on a desktop, you can exit, but there's a command on the Steam Deck where you can exit to desktop mode. And it was a bit taboo. They put these. I got a little skin on mine. They put these track pads, touch sensitive track pads, on the side here. And you can actually use those as your mouse, and then they did add support to bring in components necessary to run an on-screen keyboard, and so you can actually do some fiddly work with it from a handheld if you really wanted to.
Yeah, I mean, it is a PC. It is a full-blown Linux PC. So in that regard, you could say it's like a laptop. I mean, in terms of power, there are people using it to do their day-to-day work. Have you ever heard of Factorio? Have you ever heard of this game? Okay. Factorio is you would like it. So it you remember The Sims, right? All those games. Okay, so Factorio is you're building a factory. That's the game. You're manufacturing things. The whole point of the game is to maximize efficiency, create this super streamlined pipeline and make more products. And people really get sucked into this. I've met coworkers who are just it's so what are you doing this weekend? And it's oh yeah, I'm gonna play Factorio. And I'm just cool man, sounds fun. You're not getting enough of that at work,
But the interesting thing about this Steam Deck I found is that it does, while it does run a full version of desktop Linux, the distribution is laid out in a way that we would see for embedded products. I mean, it's a portable PC, but it's more in tune with the fact that it's not just a laptop. It's an embedded product. And so they implemented AB updates mechanism in it. So for some nice update resilience. But to do that, they needed to reconcile with the idea that they're going to give users access to this desktop environment.
Okay, so explain what AB updates are, because I bet not everybody knows.
Well, with a desktop PC, you usually call on a command that's going to install packages to move you forward in time, to update the software that's on your system. That mutates the system. But you're doing it by writing that stuff. And if you imagine if you had a power outage, that could be pretty catastrophic. And so for embedded devices, we take a different approach where you'll have the current version of the software and the OS and everything that you're booted off of right now. And there's extra space that's reserved on the disk where you can stream in an entire new image that you're going to boot into to try out, right? That would be the A to the B. In the web world, we kind of view these almost as like blue-green deployments, right? Where you'll stage the new one and try to boot into it. And to do this, though, it means that you really have to have some guarantees in place, right? Like if you're going to boot to B, but your user boot was like mutating A, they're going to lose those mutations, right? So, and that's actually a feature in embedded. We want immutable systems so that they're deterministic, so that Steam, for example, when they push out updates to their OS, doesn't break stuff.
Yeah, and immutable means read-only.
Yeah,
that's what immutable means, which like it sounds great, right? Immutable, like you can't mess it up, but it also means you can't write to it.
Yeah. Well, this has been like I think that over years, like this has been like a real friction point, and not just for immutability. Like, if you install a program that expects to be able to write at a certain spot on the disk, and that disk is read-only, that program may not function properly. And there's been a lot of programs that kind of crop up over the years that don't expect when they're developing them to be running on a read-only file system, right? Now things are changing and more people are catching up, but arguably there's been a lot of this kind of legacy mindset in the Linux world that that's just kind of grown over time, that people are putting great efforts into being able to clean up. One of which I can think of is Systemd, and also the Linux user space group has written an article and done work to be able to do the great user merge, right? Like, and it was all in service of cleaning up the files that get put down onto a file system, so that all the files that pertain to the OS itself are kind of like organized in a place, right? And that your user stuff that you'd write and contribute would be organized in a separate place, so that they're not intertwined.
Yeah, I mean it's like a mobile device, right? Like iOS is protected, your apps are in like, a separate, let's just call them sandboxed, because and so, but like as you say, historically Linux has not been sandboxed. You're installing things into the user directory. You're modifying config files in the etc directory. Like these are, that's the root file system. So yeah, like what you're saying is like what Systemd is trying to do is they're trying to pull all that mutability out of the operating system and put it into some place that's writable, so that then you can then compose the operating system inside of the user directory. So that's the user merge you're talking about, and it's. I mean, let's face it, it's a complicated concept. I don't think it's going to take a while for people to get on this bandwagon, but it's starting to happen.
If Fedora's on board, yeah, I think Ubuntu's got it in their backlog to be able to make the transitions, right? So
yeah, and which like kind of goes back to the whole Arch thing. Like it's like, there's always been these people in, these Linux users who was like, oh yeah, I run Gentoo, I compile my own kernel with all the optimizations, I know what I'm doing. I'm not one of those people, and I think a lot of people feel the same way. So, an immutable distro seems really appealing, because what happens, like, if you're using Arch? Because I tried to use Arch. Like I was like, Manjaro, yeah, I'll check it out. I'll run it as my desktop. But I completely hosed myself, because what happens? It's like the kernel revs, because they're always revving the kernel. The packages rev, they're always revving the packages. Like, say you update your packages without, keeping your kernel in sync, you end up with a system that can't boot. You've got a black screen with a mouse cursor on it. You're dead in the water. I mean, that's the problem that immutable distros are trying to fix, is that pain.
Yeah, and it's interesting because it begs the question then, like, well, how do I, as a user of a Steam Deck, want to be able to add software if I'm given this place for me to be able to, add my own stuff, but you're doing an immutable distro, like what good is there? And in addition, there was this guy Alberto Garcia. Wrote an article a while back about the Steam Deck and its Immutable OS, and it's a pretty good read.
It's so timely that that you bring this link up, because this is how I figured out how to do the release files for system extensions. Like I not the system D documentation, not like the Arch Linux forum, this blog post. This was the only thing that explained how to do it. Like ChatGPT did not help me. Claude Code, failure. This was it right here. And it's, as you can see, it's nothing. It's 2 lines in a file. That's all it takes.
So what we're seeing here is that Alberto, he talked about, well, there's a technology in systemd called system extensions that was introduced. There's system extensions, and then there's a context. And generally what these are is it's a mechanism to be able to, for system extensions, to merge the user and opt folders with an OS tree that you include via this extension. And a context does it for the Etsy folder as well. And Alberto goes on to be able to talk about the creation of this and using it and how things get loaded and understood. But this is a really interesting case because it really goes to show how by taking steps to reorganize the Linux user space, we're making progress towards a landscape that in the embedded field really is helping solve major problems of quality of life for developers, to create mechanisms where we can compose together full systems and allow some areas of mutation and areas of immutability to kind of coexist with nice boundaries, so that we don't get nasty side effects from having too much immutability, or I should say too much mutability with mutable operating systems, right? And so you had an experience recently too, where the Steam Deck, Steam OS, this shows mutations, this shows immutable systems, but all of this work actually from systemd was done pretty much in service of an effort that's going into the desktop, cloud, and server architecture locations to introduce immutability. So you were messing with this recently, right?
Yeah. So just a few days ago, I installed Fedora Bluefin on my mini PC. I've been a long time Ubuntu user. I was on the 2404 LTS. I extremely devoted. I thought I would, every couple years, I decided I'm gonna try something new just to see, what other people are experiencing. I heard about this at Scale, which is like the Southern California Linux Expo back in March, and then somebody else talked about it on a Hansel Minutes podcast, and so I was like, and it's exactly what you're describing. It's an immutable distro, and to my knowledge, the way you extend it, with mutable things is using system extensions, and yeah, it's not so, like, they're not lying. Like, it is, like, pretty much everything is read only. Like, there is a package manager. You can install you can install packages using Homebrew, which I know is weird, right? Like, this Linux, you're using Homebrew. I don't know how they made that decision. And then they're like, the other thing is like they want you to use Podman. Like, it's like, okay, well, how do I get my app onto this like read-only system? They're just like, oh yeah, just like just spin up a container with Podman and run it in there. Okay, well, yeah, I'm adept with Docker. That's not a big deal for me, but yeah. So now I'm in this brave new world of immutable distros, and but the craziest thing is like, okay, like the first thing I wanted to do was like, okay, how do I enable my VPN? Like, I'm gonna be SSHing into this thing from wherever I am, a coffee house. So I use Tailscale. Like a lot of people use Tailscale. It's just WireGuard. It's like standard Linux VPN, and then I noticed in the upper right hand corner there were all these like Tailscale icons, and it said it was enabled, and I was like, well, how does this even, like, how, right? Like, it doesn't know my credentials. Like it's how it doesn't know who I am. How could it connect to my VPN? It was not connected to my VPN. It just meant that, like, Tailscale was running. Like I had Tailscale at the command line. I could do Tailscale up or whatever. And so, how do you connect a device to your VPN with Tailscale? You do, like, I don't know, Tailscale login, and then it gives you a URL that you then paste into a browser, and then that's how you authenticate. That's how you get your device to join the VPN. So I did all that, and it failed. Like it didn't even work. Like I got like some error back from the website, and I was just like, all right, well, I guess I'm not on my VPN now. But then I was just like, so I did some investigation, like, why did this fail? And then I was like, well, what the heck am I even running, right? Like, how did I get Tailscale? How did Tailscale get on here in the first place? And I ended up in this like, control panel where it had like system extensions. It had like a whole list of them, and there was just like there were switches to toggle them on and off. So it's like,
I think this is important though, because it's like Tailscale is an example of a binary doing your VPN stuff, right? That's a very host level thing. And if the answer for an immutable distribution solely is pods and containers, well, those fall short when it comes to, like, I imagine it's probably possible that you might be able to do some crazy networking to get like networking stood up inside of a container and then expose it back to the host somehow, but it's a situation where being able to actually extend the host OS is like super important. And that's why system extensions are wrapping it up in that and using that mechanism is so important.
If you look at like the Bluefin docs, like they talk about GNOME extensions, right? So which is like, I mean, that's the UI, right? So it's like that's how you end up with things, showing up and disappearing on the UI. So I mean, I don't know how the heck that maps to system extensions, or if it even does. So I don't really know what's going on yet. I mean, like I said, it's only been a few days, but I'm intrigued. I'll say that it's intriguing.
That's exciting. We'll have to keep up with your experience there, because I think one of the biggest appeals of immutability in OS is going to be the long-term stability, right? Like throughout your update sequence, compared back to your Manjaro experiments, like is it more stable? And that's like opposite ends of the spectrum pretty much on the comparator there, but still, I think that's gonna be a good place for us to. I'd love to be able to keep up with that one as well. Another great thing about system extensions, I think, is past the immutable distributions. We talked about a little on how great they're going to be for our choices, design choices, and usage for Avocado, and what the composability of them offers, especially for immutable distributions. But you're actually, Frank, you're going to be giving a talk coming up soon at Open Source Summit in Denver, and it's called Overlay Images to the Rescue. where you cover some of these things, but there's this other use case that you have for the use in debugging, right?
Yeah, yeah. So, these overlay images are exactly, what what their name means. You're overlaying an image on top of the root file system, and so that's especially handy for things like debugging, because debug symbols, that's that's a special version of the binaries, so you can just swap out the non-debug binary with the debug binary that has all the symbols. Like, it's actually quite larger, that takes up more space, but this gives you like an instantaneous way to do it, by just like flipping that overlay image on, whereas instead of having to reboot or do like an OTA update, which is what you had to do in the past.
Yeah, so you get that ephemeral nature of that too, because in that case, like if you were to extend at runtime and it's not placed in one of the more permanent facilities, like I know systemd has a service unit that will look for system extensions and conf extensions in known places like varlib extensions and varlib confext. There's also one in run, I know, where you can you can't jam a whole image into run, but you could alias or even symlink if you wanted for a short period of time. And even you can call systemd sysext directly and just point it at a place to be able to do the patching for an extension, I believe. So in that case, then if you enable an extension while you can disable one, as you mentioned with your Tailscale experience, you can actually just reboot in those cases, and if it's not re-enabled by default, then that experience is, you're in, you debugged it, you fixed the problem, you reboot it, and you're out.
The VPN, like that to me is like, that's the tunneling story, right? Like how do you get an SSH tunnel into your devices? For me, the easiest way is just to connect to a VPN. But you don't want that all the time, but like when everything's on fire, okay, then that's when that's when you pull out the escape hatch, right?
Yeah.
So that's what I mean, that hence the name, overlay images to the rescue.
So system extensions have a lot of versatility. For Avocado, we believe that it's going to empower us to create a delightful binary distribution, really specifically targeted towards creating a joyful experience for embedded developers. I believe that its composability is going to be able to let us achieve that sort of packagey feel, but at build time, while maintaining all of the guarantees that we want with embedded systems, immutability, determinism at runtime. So it's going to be great if you want to be able to check out more about what we're up to with the Avocado distribution. You can visit avocadolinux.org. There's a site that we have there that talks about our pillars and what we're focused on. And there's also a lot of work that's being done at the GitHub repositories at avocado-linux, the GitHub org.
I'm very excited about it because, the embedded Linux community has needed something like this forever. It really is just too hard to do it the way we've been doing it, and everybody wants a binary distro, just like a normal distro, like what's running on the Steam Deck, that they can install on their device and develop on. I know it's not the way we've done it in the past, but let's face it, like developers want to install packages. Like that's how they work. And we are going to enable that for them.
Yep. Yeah. Awesome. Yeah. So as Frank mentioned, we're really pushing hard to be able to get an awesome, compelling demo of this that we're going to present at Open Source Summit. As Peridio, we have a booth at the expo. Definitely come check us out there. But yeah, we're doing this all out in the open. We love to have people come and have more conversations and feedback on the approaches. Hearing what people are doing and building in the community is extremely helpful and valuable to make sure that the direction that we're steering this in is one that's going to be satisfying experience for a lot of developers. So thanks everybody for listening in. More to come. Stay tuned and talk to you on the next one.
See you in Denver.
All right, everybody. Just a quick reminder, this podcast is presented by Peridio, the ecosystem for building and maintaining advanced embedded products.